Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome again back to the Earth, our Mudfossil Gaia. So after they slew that second monster, Elk, who also happens to be a dragon, he goes on to slay what they call the rock monster birds. These rock monster birds lived up on what we now know as Shiprock. So let me read this part to you, and then I'll take you and show you guys what I think I found over by Shiprock. He started away toward the eagle. When he came to him, he wrapped the elk hide about himself and went out to an open place. The eagle, when he swooped down, attempted to drive his talons into him, but could not penetrate the hide. He flew up without getting hold of him. He came to him again, but failed to get his talons in. He flew up again. He came back, and having failed, flew away again. Then he came back and drove his talons. He flew away to his home with the man. He brought him to his young. When they bent their heads down over him, he said, "Sst. Father, when we put our heads down to it, it says, Sst," one of them said. "Do not mind it. Go ahead and eat it. It is the air coming out of the wound that makes the noise." Then the blood flowed through the opening, and the old eagle flew away. Nyatninskani came up to them holding the horn in his hand. "When your father comes home, on what rock does he sit?" he asked. "He sits on yonder point of rock," one of them told him. Nyatninskani sat there with the eagle's children until the father came again, bringing with him a pretty dead girl, which he threw down. Making motions 4 times, Nyatninskani struck him, and he fell into the canyon. He heard him burst as he struck. "When your mother comes back, where does she sit?" he asked. "She sit here," one of them said. The mother came back. Nyatninskani, making motions 4 times, struck her, throwing her into the canyon. Then he said to the young eagles, "You will be just as large as you are now. People will like your feathers. Those who take them will have their muscles draw up. You shall not talk," he said. Then they ceased talking. In the distance, his grandmother, Bat, was coming into the open from the timber. She walked along carrying a basket. Then he shouted to her, "Grandmother, take me down." But she did not hear. He shouted to her again, and then she heard. Then his grandmother came near him. "I shouted to you, 'Take me down, grandmother,'" he said. "Come up and take me down," he told her. Then she climbed up to him carrying her basket. "Grandmother, this carrying rope on your basket is very small." "Why, grandson, I carry very heavy things with this. Fill it with stones and see if it breaks." When he had filled it, she jumped with it. Then she took the stones out again, and he got in. "Shut your grandson." She started to go down with him. "Do not open your eyes, grandson," she cautioned to him. "The rock is sheer. We are falling, grandson. Do not open your eyes. We are down." When they were at the foot of the cliff, Nyatninskani said, "Grandmother, I have killed something. Let us go to it." When they came there, he said, "Now, grandmother, I will give you some good property. Put down your basket here." Then he filled it with feathers. "Now you may carry it away, but do not go along the hillside. Go along the top of the hills, he told her. She carried it away along the hillside, and the birds came and took away the feathers. She came back to him, and he filled her basket again. Do not carry the basket on the hillside, he told her. Again, she carried it along the side of the hill, and the birds came and took away all the feathers. She came back to him again, and he filled the basket for her. Do not carry it along the sloping places, I told you, he said. Then they took the feathers away from her. When she came back to him this time, he said, You do not want to possess this good property which I have been giving you. For that reason, your feathers will be poor. You will live in the clefts of the rocks and will use bark for your house. Your garments will be poor. You do not want things that are good. You will not have a shirt. He went again when there was something bad. When he came among the people there, they said to him, If you have a supernatural power, take out our people from the marsh where they have sunk. Very well, he said, I will take them out for you. Then he came to the place. He stood first at the east, then at the south, then at the west, and finally at the north. Then the water disappeared of itself, and he went into the entrance and went in. I have come for the people you have taken away, he said. Bring them to me. Do not bring just one. There are no people, replied the monster. Just bring them to me. Do not talk. Then he brought them to him. Just one sits there, he said. I did not come for one, he told him. Then he sent one out to him. Are there many people where you are staying? He asked. There are many people there, he said. Bring them all out, Nayatnisgani called. The people all began to crowd outside. Then they went up to the surface of the ground. You may just stay in the marsh, he said to the monster. When all the people had come out, he spoke to him, the monster. You must not do it any time. Just soft mud does not talk. It must not speak words. Then he went out away from him and came to where the people were. 4 of you take charge of your people, he said. Do not go close in among the houses. Then 4 of them came there. Now pick out your own people and go home with them, he told them. Now you pick your people, he said to another. And that one picked his people. Then he went to another place. You pick out your people, he told the third. That one selected his relatives. Then he called to another in the same manner, and he picked out his folks. Then they were all satisfied. Nayatninskani was sitting there. I just speak to you, he said. Select for me 4 pretty girls. I wish to go with them. Then he went away with them toward the west, at Kadoje. He left one at Tsobe, another, and at Bikdalke, the third. With the other one, he went to the west, where they remain forever. So, Shiprock, they say, was a bird that brought the Navajo people here. The Navajo people came here on this giant bird, and the bird landed and was resting, and they lived on the bird, only coming down to plant and get water, and they lived on it until one day it was struck by lightning. And when it was struck by lightning, it ruined the path to where they could not get up and down anymore. And a lot of the women and children got stuck on top. And so that's one part of the story. When I heard that part of the story, I couldn't help but imagine something sort of like this. And here again we have another Native American story that speaks of structures that were destroyed by lightning and creatures the size of mountains. When Monster Slayer came over, he came to Shiprock because a giant rock bird or rock eagle, rock monster bird, a dragon basically, made a nest on top of Shiprock, trapping the bird underneath. And so the people came and asked for Monster Slayer to help the bird. And so he came over and he killed the two monsters. And in the process, the giant Navajo bird was injured, fatally injured. And so what he did was he turned it to stone to save it from dying. So I've been looking at this for quite some time now, trying to see the bird that they speak of, because they call it, like the name itself, the native Navajo name means rock with wings. And, you know, it does kind of look like wing and a tail maybe, you know. But it also has this huge white, like, you know, this almost looks like a bird head, right? Like that could be the beak and the wings up in here maybe. I don't know. But the rock monsters that lived on it, oh, and they also say, if you look at it from, I believe it's this angle here, they say these two peaks are the wings of the bird, and its head kind of comes down here. And so it looks like a sitting bird from certain angles. So there's that. But in the story, now there's one story that talks about the rock monster birds, and they say he cut the head off and threw it, and the head became Cabazon Peak. Well, Cabazon Peak I don't think quite looks like a bird head, but there is one over there that does look like a bird head. But right down here, these look like, you know, this could have been a bird, and that's the head. And here's the head of another bird, Mama and Papa, right there at the bottom of the mountain, just like he said. But yeah, that looks definitely like stripped birds, because he stripped all the feathers. You know, that's what they do. But yeah, I think those are the two, the Mama and the Papa. They're about the right size to have been living on here. And over by Cabazon Peak, I'll show you, because there is, okay, so Cabazon Peak is right here. And, you know, looking at the size difference here too, this would have been way too big to be the head of a creature that would have lived on top of Shiprock, I think. I think that would have been way too big. But there's another one right here that actually does look like a bird head. I think it's that one. Let me see. Yeah, Cerro de Guadalupe. That one looks like it could have been a bird head. And so, you know, when you see things like this that are real similar to the story, maybe that's why they thought, you know, Cabazon Peak could have been the head of one of those birds. This looks like it could have been the head of a dragon. So maybe that's how that part got into the story. Thought that was kind of cool. Look at those scales. That is so cool. And then you can see up the top here, those like basalt columns again. Really strange. Yeah, this definitely could have been another one of those innate creatures. Now, when it comes to the water monster, there's a few places here that I've considered, and I'll show you what I see, and I'll let you make up your own mind. So this thing here, this big red and blackish blobby thing, right? It's kind of something all of its own here. It doesn't really seem to fit in with what a wing of this dragon would be. I don't think it really looks like the other one. So I've been looking at this one a lot closer, and there's a couple different things I think this could be. So you can kind of see an eye right here and a mouth right here, and what kind of looks like a turtle head, maybe, of like a leatherback type turtle here, maybe. So I thought possibly this could be that swamp monster. I don't know. It doesn't give a real specific geographic location or a really great description of what the animal looked like. So that one's really a little bit harder to determine. Getting in there and actually talking to some of the locals might help. Now, another thing I have considered that this could be, when you look at it from this angle, this lava flow here, there's a volcano right here that it's supposed to be coming from. So this right here is the source of this lava flow. That's what the geologists are going to tell us, that all of this lava here came from this volcano. And this really kind of looks like the silhouette of a really handsome Native American gentleman. Like, here's his eye and his nose, his mouth, his chin comes down, and it's like his hair is kind of flowy, all flowy. And the lava comes right from the mouth, just like one of the stories. There's only one of the versions where they say they actually cut the head off of him. All the other stories say that this lava flow comes from his mouth, and here's a beautiful silhouette of a Native American man with a lava flow coming out of his mouth, right directly in between Mount Taylor, which is right here, and Gallup is right here. They say Yeitzo was killed right in between, right here. So he would have to be somewhere in this area. And when I showed you the Grants Ridge up here, that is very small to have been the largest of the Ine. One of these stories say, they give very specific details of how large Yeitzo was. His name alone means great giant. So he wasn't just a giant. He was the greatest, the giant of the giants. And they say that he, in one step, could take a step as far as a man could walk in a half a day. So me and my husband were trying to figure that out. So maybe it's about a 20-mile foot span there. That's pretty big. And if this guy over here would have been monster number 2, the Delgette monster, then that little Grant's Ridge would be too small to have been the greatest of the Ane, being Yeitso. But this here, you know, we have that lava flow coming right from the mouth. And when you look at the rest of the body too, now he was supposed to be covered in scales, and they also stripped him of his scales, right? But I mean, you can kind of see it looks like maybe an arm comes down here and another one up here, you know? Could be. Could be. And then maybe the smaller lava flow, which would make sense for the smaller one to have been where he kept his blood and heart and all of that, in that place called Open Mouth Bear. I wonder if somewhere over here is what they call the Open Mouth Bear place. Whatever that is, I still can't figure that one out. And then over here, Delgette, I think his wings come up his back over here. I think this might be his back. And in the story, they skinned him and they laid his hide out to dry. And it really looks like a skinned animal here. That's what it really looks like a bunch of flesh that had the skin ripped off. Yeah, and over here, how I said just a minute ago, it looks a lot different. Over here does not look the same as this wing. This like comes up, you can see a little spike right here, and it goes like a dragon wing would. This doesn't have any of that type feature to it. But what's really strange, right here, the Native Americans named this place Wingate, okay? Fort Wingate came later. They named it after the town that the Native Americans had here that they called Wingate. So, and it definitely, I mean, I can see the feathers. That's so feathery. But over here, let's see if I can get the name to come up. This top part, I think, is something entirely of its own. I think the best angle is about here. Right here we have a chin. Okay, here's our jawline, chin, nose, eye. So we have a very pronounced facial feature, right? Very muscular, like, yeah, there it is, Fallen Timber Ridge. But very muscular neck line, shoulders. And this looks like a wing. So it looks almost like a giant bat creature or bird man. But it looks like he's got giant wings that come up right here. And I think those are his wings. He's laying on one of them. And then there's one more on this side. And I think that's why they named it Wingate. But I think this is something entirely of its own. I don't think it's part of the dragon. And he's looking right at him. Look, the dragon's looking right at him. They were probably buddies. Probably just another one of the monsters. Now, in the story, they say there were countless monsters that a lot of them didn't even get into the stories, you know. The ones that did were just the few lucky, I guess. There were so many nameless monsters that really, truly, they are laying around everywhere out here. They are. I showed you the few dragons in the last video in number 2 that could have possibly been the dragon from the Apache story. And the big dragon in the beginning of the Apache story, when they say the eagle dropped a rock on his head, I wonder if that was this guy. Now, here is his eye, and there's a horn that goes up here. The Grand Canyon goes through the horn. Another horn comes up here, and his mouth kind of comes around here. It's open. It looks almost like a dog face type dragon. And that sunset crater volcano is right on his forehead here. And so if this dragon was in the sky and had something dropped on him, on his head, just like the story says, you would have this huge bit of trauma right there. And lava is dragon's blood. It just is. So that would make sense that maybe that's the dragon from the beginning of the story. And then later on, you know how they go down in stature with each creation, each world. So this could have been like from the first world or the second world. Maybe it was one of the first primordial dragons. And then the Apache dragon slayer, I'm wondering now if it could be an entirely different story than the monster slayers. It is very similar. It has so many of the same characteristics, you know, the 4 layers of scales, the way they taunt back and forth, all of that. But over here by Fort Apache, we have a whole nother dragon that looks like it could have fallen off, or, you know, down the mountain. They say at the bottom of the mountain, at the bottom of the canyon, you can see the bones of the dragon still lying there today. And so if, you know, they were up here in Fort Apache, right up here, then that would be the bottom of the canyon. And this thing is cool looking. He's got a very bird-like face here. It could be like a basilisk type dragon. His chest, I think that's one of his feet. And a wing that comes up here, and a wing that comes up here. And a really cool looking long tail. Could even be some sort of bird or phoenix type thing. Looks like a big phoenix type bird tail. Very cool looking. So, and there's a whole nother dragon right down here too. See, okay, so they're everywhere. I'm telling you guys, they're everywhere. This one has a Hilltop Paradise portal on top of him. There's a place up here called, there's Portal, there's Hilltop and Paradise up here. But this one has this huge spiky like tail over here. I think this is his tail, and he's got like the spikes on his tail. And this is the body, and his neck wraps around right here, and here's his face, here's his eye, and the mouth right here, his snout, like his head comes around here and snout there, and he wraps around. And he's got a really cool spiky like head. Yeah. So I considered this dragon for the Apache story also, you know, without a specific canyon to know which dragon they're speaking of. That one's hard to tell. But there are so many creatures laying around here. They are just everywhere. And so like I keep saying, it could be any one of them. It really could. And that's why I'd really like to get in touch with some of these story keepers and try to get to the bottom of this. If we look at this with a scientific perspective, the kind of fields that we have now we have forensic geologists that can go in there and look at this scene like I do from above and see things in a completely different way if they would just look at it for what it could be. So when it comes to the many different versions of the stories, that's why I wanted to share with you guys so many, because there are so many possibilities of what possibly could have happened. And this right here is the fun part for me, to take those little bits of the story and go into the Google Earth and see what fits. You know, this is what I would love to have a team for. You know, little old me, I can't get out there and do a whole lot. I'm about to hit the road, and we are going to be traveling, hopefully, up here. This is where I want to go first. Right here is where this whole story happened. The whole scene is supposed to have happened right here. Navajo Nation. So we want to try to get up here and talk to some of the local people. You know, there are still people living that hold these stories that have not been written down yet. That's what we need to find. We need to find the stories that correlate to what we can now see. With this technology of Google Earth from above, we can see some major things happened here, right? So I want to start really diving into the local folklore and find these story keepers that are holding this information. That's what I want to do. One more really cool thing I just learned that I'd like to share with you guys. This Mount Taylor, how I told you guys it kind of looks like some sort of antler man, right? Like here's his eye and his nose, and he's got like a beard, his neck, and it's like he has big spiky antlers on his head, right? And like this could be some sort of mace or club or weapon of his, right? Well, up here on his shoulder, this thing is so cool. He's got a dragon on his shoulder, you guys. It's one of those like long neck giraffe type dragons. You'll see them in a lot of Islamic texts. But yeah, here's his neck. And there's his, about it where his eye is, right? And big, beautiful snout there. And these are his wings that come up right here. Yeah, he's got a big dragon on his shoulder. Yeah, look at this right here. The scales on this thing. I want to go up to this one. This one shouldn't be hard to get to. I know this is supposed to be lava rock. Okay, but why does it look like they're all stacked like shingles? You see that? It's like they're stacked on one another, like shingles or scales, maybe? Right? How cool is that? Yeah, that guy's cool looking. And so, yeah, this guy here, Mount Taylor, actually is part of the story. Not part of this story specifically. He's part of the story. This is the sun god. This is also Turquoise Boy. This is the father of the hero twins. So when they visit their father, the sun god, to go get these weapons to fight the Ane with, this is who they go visit. They went and visited him. Now, this mountain was already here at the time. And so that's another really cool thing, because when they went to go see their father and he sent them back on a rainbow, they landed right on Mount Taylor. This is where he landed them back at. So it makes perfect sense that his portal would be on him, you know, coming from, I just thought that was really cool. So yeah, this was Turquoise Boy until they did this ceremony for him to enter the mountain and become the sun. And now he's the sun. And their mother, who was White Shell Woman, White Bead Woman, or Ever-Changing Woman, she is the moon. So in this ceremony, the holy people, I'll read you the story in the next video, because it goes along really good with the ending that I want to share with you guys. But this actually, I guess this is the father of the hero twins. That's him. So, of course, I will leave a link for this video. It is the Navajo telling of the hero twins, and it's actually a language lesson, a Navajo language lesson, but they tell this story in such great detail that I would really recommend going and hearing it from them. You know, this is from the mouth of the Dene, and they will tell you about the lava flow around Grants in New Mexico by Mount Taylor. And this is the part of the story where I was just showing you that bat-like creature. Well, here, when they tell you about the nameless monsters, countless nameless monsters, this is the picture they give us. They're like bat creatures. Look at that. That's pretty cool. And so here they go on to next they fight. Oh, there's the bear. And then Walking Rock Monster. And then I believe it's Kicking Rock Monster. Yeah. Kicking Rock Monster. So Kicking Rock Monster and Walking Rock Monster, I will tell you their story in part 4, and I'll see what I can find about this bear too. I'm going to touch a little bit more on the details of the Navajo telling of the story and tell you guys the last 2 monsters in that story, because they even give, again, specific geographical locations. And one of them also has an alternate ending to where these hero twins could possibly still be. So, watch for part 4, and after I share with you the last 2 monsters, I'll share with you guys a few more theories on exactly who these hero twins could be and where they might be today.